Previously on Ark.
Surprise,
Whoa,
motherfucker!
whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoops. Oh, please don't knock me off of this ledge. Oh. And of course the other one's angry at me. Could you get out of the water? Are you serious? You are definitely the dumber one out of the two. Bruh. Why are you running away from me? He's running away from me. What in the heck? Go to sleep. Oh. Hi there. Is that a mech T-Rex? Level 60 female? Another mech T-Rex? Really? Ooh, that would go perfect with my female. It's 126.
Molly, you in danger, girl.
When I was heading back home, I did find a level 135 RG. This RG was situated near the river that meets the volcanic region and the grassy lands and was just near the snowy caps. So I quickly headed back home. I harvested a bunch of berries for narcotics and tranks. I also decided to make a smithy table so that I could make a crossbow and so I could also make some metal tools. Once I had done all that, I then headed back and I started scoping out a decent area where I could start building my trap, since it would be a lot easier for me to pull the RG in an area that was a lot closer to it rather than further away. I did eventually find a spot that I was quite happy with and also was easy for me to build on because the terrain was a bit like sloped, so it was a little bit complicated. But I did manage to find a spot and I started building my trap there. The materials you see me learning on screen are what I used to make this RG trap, although I do recommend a few changes that you will find out as I explain later that I made, because unfortunately the RGs did end up like flying out of the trap, or was too much of a gap where they would break free, and that's not something you would want happening when you're trying to tame an RG, especially an RG, as they tend to fly away when they're getting close to being unconscious. So I finally made the RG trap. However, I did run into an issue multiple times where there was too much of a gap between the fence foundations. Like I am showing here, later down the line I ended up fixing it again. And what you want to do is make sure that all of those fence tiles or whatever are a little bit closer together and you have them on the side of the trap. I'd also recommend putting them maybe farther up or a roof or some sort so that the RG can't fly out, because sometimes I did encounter that issue. However, this is what I did to make it more efficient. Of course, trial and error comes from multiple failures.
Father, help!
After losing that RG, I've begun to realize that my RG trap was not up to par the way it should have been. So I decided, like the last clip, that I would fix my RG trap. So I ended up dismantling the stone fence foundations and repositioning them in better spots so that the RG was a lot more closed off than last time. And here's the clip again in case you had forgotten what it looked like.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So then, after a little bit of trouble, I finally got the RG, and I filled its slot with food and just waited for it to tame. Once I had tamed it, I grabbed it and started having it follow me all the way back home, where then I would end up creating a saddle for it. Besides an RG saddle, I also learned how to make a refrigerator, an air conditioner, tranquilizer darts, a Uterana saddle, a tickled turkey saddle, an industrial forge, chemistry bench, a chemical substance, an industrial cooker, and a cryopod storage thing or whatever it is. Also, tickled turkey is a code for the dinosaur that looks like a bird with big old claws. At this point, I also did make a small pen to trap some small dinos in when I went to go pick them up with my RG and bring them home. This is usually the method I would use for a Diodicarus, an Ankylosaurus, and a couple other smaller dinos. This is also when I remembered that Procopodon back a while ago, and I went to go and try and grab it. Nope. And of course, like expected, I couldn't pick it up.
Nope.
And of course getting stuck a little bit by wedging my bird between its butt and a rock. This is when I realized I couldn't pick it up, so I tried to tame it, assuming it was a passive tame, but
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
Besides noticing that I was not going to be able to tame this kangaroo right away, I did notice that there was an Alvaraptor nearby.
Hello, motherfucker!
Because I felt it was a bit too close to the Procopodon and I wanted to keep it alive until I could tame it, I decided that I would remove the Alvaraptor's minions before killing the Alvaraptor in the end. This was also good because it was a great way to level up my character much faster and my RG as well. After killing it, I devoured its corpse, consuming all its prime meat and filling my RG's inventory. I then quickly leveled up my RG, not letting those points go to waste. Before, of course, heading back home before nighttime. So, during the time I was playing the island, the Christmas event was going on. So naturally, for once finding Santa, I decided to head out and grab a couple of his goodies. They just mostly consisted of chibis and items. Sometimes they were ascendant items and blueprints. I also ended up getting mistletoe and coal. After finding out that mistletoe and coal you end up feeding to gotchas that wander the map, after realizing that most of these gotchas I'd be able to find at Vegetarian Island, I was looking to go over there before this little guy ended up catching my attention. Aww. Obviously, I am a sucker for the adorable, so he did end up keeping me occupied for about 5 minutes before I decided to continue heading over to Vegetarian Island to get some gotchas to give me some gifts. Once I got to Herbivore Island, I decided that I would check out the herbivores around the area, see if there was any decent levels running about, which there were quite a few, but none that really I wanted to go through all the trouble of taming or carrying all the way back home. And unfortunately, I didn't have any cryopods with me. After messing around a little bit, I decided to head over to the gotchas that I noticed on the island and decided to put a bunch of the materials that I got, the mistletoe and the coal, into its inventory. I then began following it around, waiting for it to essentially consume what was given to it, and after a while, I didn't really know what I was looking for, because I assumed it would be in its inventory, but actually it was a gem on the ground that you would later break apart that would give you stuff. So I basically just kept waiting for it to chew and keep dropping these gems off of its back until there was no more mistletoe or coal in its inventory.
No, 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 no.
After getting all that it would be able to offer, I then decided to crack open these gems and see what they had to offer. I noticed besides the two chibis that there was a little dye candy. These candies were mostly for tame dinos, which you would drop in their inventory and then they would eat it and it would change their colors.
Very beautiful. Very powerful.
I didn't mind the dye, I thought it was pretty nice, so I kept it on my bird, but I did notice that after 23 hours or 23 days, I'm not really sure, 23 hours maybe in game, that dye would disappear, unfortunately, after a while. I did quite like it though, so I just decided to keep it until the timer would run out. I decided to continue looking around the Herbivore Island to see if I could find any other tames that might be worth my troubles, but ultimately I did decide that I kinda didn't really care too much, so I decided to head home. And even though that Stego was a decent level, it wasn't worth the trouble. Especially when a tickle turkey can produce more wood than a stego, and a rhino can give more thatch than a stego. So I decided it was not worth it in the end. This is when I decided to just look around the map again for some tames and see if I could find any that were actually worth my trouble that I wouldn't have to carry halfway across the water to get. An interesting dino that I did find though was yet another Procopodon that was level 25. Though its colors were nice, the level wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, but in the end I may or may have not have ended up taming it anyways. But that will be spicy content for another episode. And since this is a really long episode, this is your daily reminder to drink your water. Unfortunately, I didn't find any tames that I really wanted, so I decided to head back to grab that Procopodon that was level 105. Unfortunately, I ran into a bit of an issue where I wasn't able to locate it. This did have me a little worried because I immediately assumed that something else had killed the Procopodon, which was a very nice level. Or it ran off somewhere and I wasn't gonna be able to find it again. And during this video, I even tried observing very closely to see if I had missed it. Unfortunately, I couldn't even spot it while editing this video. So wherever it ended up, I couldn't find it, and it's really unfortunate because that was a really nice level for Procopodon. And I was hoping to tame it, but it is what it is, so I decided since I wasn't going to be able to find this Procopodon to just head back home and see what else I could do. And I did end up looking for other tames, but while I was doing that, I almost ended up dying. So after that very close call, I decided to take a moment and hug the crap out of my little chibi for emotional support. After hugging my chibi enough, I headed back out and looked for some more potential tames. So what ended up happening was when I was in spyglass mode, my spyglass ended up being in the same hotbar key as my inventory, so when I was trying to press it to get out of the spyglass mode, it ended up going to my inventory, and then when I left my inventory, it would end up going back to the spyglass, and it would repeat that repetition to the point where I eventually gave up on trying to get out of it in a panic, and just slowly flew away because that was the only option I could think of until I could calmly get out of my spyglass. And yes, I did change the hotkeys around after that. So while I was looking around, I did notice in the snowy area there was quite a few colors that were pretty nice. There was this one Calatherium, I think it's called, that had like pastels and stuff which looked pretty nice. And then there was also this lime green RG. Unfortunately, the moment I spotted it, it got eaten by a bunch of direwolves, so it was off the cards. Finally, however, I did find a pretty nice colored Ankleo, and despite it only being level 45, it was worth it to me. So after grabbing a little explorer note, I picked up this Ankleo and took it home. Of course, you know, I could have waited for a better tame, but at this point I felt like it was worth just getting an Ankleo at this point because I was eager to build my house, which I really needed an Ankleo and a Diodicarus to make my house building a lot easier. After finally getting it in the trap, I then began tranking it to death until it went unconscious before I fed it some food. This is also like probably the easiest way to tame your dinos in terms of an Ankleo and a Diodicarus, especially when they're higher level, and it's less likely for them to get away and or get killed by something that will just then ruin your tame.
Hello, it's me.
I couldn't really figure out a name for my Ankleo at this time, so I just decided to get him out of the trap and situate him in a spot where he was needed till I could make him a saddle. After moving the little guy to his little spot, I fixed up the trap again and headed over to Spawn Beach as I did find a decent colored Diodicarus when I was hauling him over. I checked to see if he was still alive, and to my surprise it was, so I quickly scooted over there and picked up that Diodicarus. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very high level tame, but after about 5 hours of searching, I just decided to settle on the level and work on leveling it up later, using cryopods. When I brought it over and tried to plop it in my trap, I realized that I was missing a piece, so I was going to quickly get some materials to make a wall, and when I came back to do that, I unfortunately clicked the follow command in one spot for all dinos, so you could imagine what I had to do next. Reorganize. So after I ended up reorganizing all my dinos because of that little hiccup, I finally was able to put the Diodicarus in the little trap after fixing it, and of course did the regular old tranking it in the face until it fell asleep and then shoving food in its mouth and yada yada. Of course, after tranking it, I then realized that I hadn't made an Ankleo or Diodicarus saddle, so I headed back to the smithy, and I ended up making a Deodicro saddle, and I would make an Anglio saddle a little bit later. So after situating the little guy, I ended up putting a saddle on him and situating him into a spot, and also making the Anklio saddle and also situating him into a little spot as well. It was at this point that it was nighttime again, which means Santa was roaming around once more, dropping all of his gifts, and of course, being the little scavenger I am, decided to go and take part in those goodies. Ark really likes to put these gifts in areas where there's a lot of hostiles around, I've noticed. Unfortunately, my little gift wrapping scavenger hunt didn't last very long. So after a little bit of payback, I headed home with the few gifts that I was able to scavenge for. After looking through what I was able to get, I ended up throwing all of it into the smithy for later, as I focused on something else that required a little bit more of my attention. Thus being the draft for my large base that I wanted to build near the spawn beach. Of course, when I got there, 2 more T-Rexes did end up spawning right at Spawn Beach again. But at this point, I didn't really care. I just wanted to begin starting my build, and they were far enough away where they wouldn't interrupt me for the time being. So for the beginning, I just mostly used like thatch foundation tiles, as they were just a great way to basically build out the blueprint that I was trying to follow on a video. Later on, I would obviously make these tiles out of whatever material I actually wanted it to be, including like the walls and everything. Unfortunately, I didn't really record that as it was a lot of mundaneness, so I hope that's okay. I just felt that recording my entire building process would be a little bit boring, considering it took me almost like half a day to finish. At some point when I was building, I noticed that these T-Rexes were getting a bit too close to my base. So I had decided that I needed to remove them as they were a problem. So after removing the opposition, I returned to creating my blueprint with my thatch foundations. After a bit of finagling with the blueprint tiles, I did notice a rather nicely colored Ankylosaurus across the way on Spawn Beach. The level was fairly okay, so I couldn't resist in grabbing it, especially since it was also a female, which was perfect for my male Ankylo. I wasn't really sure if I was going to use the eggs for kibble or not, but I figured why not grab it. It was a nice color, and I needed an excuse because it was a really, really nice color. Surprisingly, despite all the orange Davises trying to kill it, I did manage to swoop in and save it. Of course, they were not too happy about that.
It's on, bitch.
He's at the tower. He doesn't have anything worth it yet. After finally shoving her in the pen, I took no time at all in tranking her. I'm sure she's really appreciating that by the look on her face. Hey, like and subscribe. After finally taming this beautiful Ankylo, I had the perfect name for her, Bubblegum. This also encouraged me to name all of my other dinos. My Pterodon Sage, my Purple Trike Calla, my Green Trike Cypress, my Purple-Blue Dioticus Mauve, my bird Juniper, my other Ankylo Jam, and of course my Dimorphodon Maroon. I also quickly headed out to see if I could find any decent tames, and I found a level 120 male Phiomia. I, of course, carried it all the way home, tamed it, and would eventually name it. I'll let you guess. Did you guess it? That's right. I named it Tomato. I couldn't resist. Of course, I made a saddle for good old Tomato and organized it just like all the rest of the dinos, and that was mostly all my tames for this video. Of course, it was nearing night at this point, so I headed out and looked for Santa before checking out what gifts he had offered me this time around, with thankfully no problems this time. The gifts were pretty spicy this round, so I was very pleased. I quickly headed home with my goodies and decided to unwrap one of my gifts for the end of the video. If you do not know what type of chibi I'm about to equip, it is called a Maywing, which is one of my favorite dinos they released, which is during Genesis or Genesis 2. I absolutely adore it. The Ferox is also very cute too. Oh my goodness. Look at you.
Emotional damage.